We are off to the Oregon coast for 5 days, mostly to play in the sand. The idea with this was to make a sand toy that you could make different patterns in the sand with. So I made a different pattern on each side. And I gave it to the kids, and they played with it for a bit, and it seemed a little stiff, as in they knew Dad was trying to get them to play with it. And they weren't really as into it as one would hope, trying to show them different patterns it can make. Found that the bigger shapes were pretty hard to push through the sand, and really the finer pattern worked the best. And you can make straight patterns, and you can make circles and curves. Although it's kind of like it needs a long handle on it, like the way a broom would work. Bending over to use it in the sand gets a little tedious. Now, when the kids started to get a little more comfortable with it, all the patterning and texturing and all that kind of went away, and they just used it like a stick, just as a way to draw in the sand. And I think they were getting a little deprived of their screen time, as the first thing they made was a giant phone. So really, in the end, the best beach toy is a stick. Simple and readily available. I had this vision in my head before we went that I would make some sort of animal out of driftwood and then animate it, which worked okay, but I ended up not really make as big of a production out of it as I'd hoped. But really, the thing that we like to do at the coast is to find the places where little streams come out onto the beach, and you can sort of play water engineer and make dams and reroute the streams. And we found we do this quite a lot. We've learned that it's better to build the part of the dam where the water isn't first, so it's not being washed away as you're trying to put it together. Then once you have that put together, you can then build the bit where the water is and do the final piece of the dam. Now this one, we got to work the first time, and we managed to stay ahead of it, and I built a spillway around the side to let some of the pressure out, but it wasn't really big enough or deep enough. And we lost control of the main dam, and it broke to a point where we couldn't stay on top of it. So I let the lake drain. I think I've found that I really like is watching the sand being carved by the water. I like being able to control the flow and having that flow do the work of moving the sand. It's just really, really, really interesting to watch. So we tried to build an upper dam and then fill in the gap in the lower dam, and it almost worked, but we just could not stay in front of it. So we did it a second time, and we had the same problem. I think this spot on this river, we just didn't have enough space to hold the water behind the dam, and it would rise too quickly, and we would get a flood. So this was a different spot that we were actually pretty successful with. It broke once, but we were able to fix it, and we got it to sort of carve into the bank around the side. And we had it going really well, and then the tide came in, and there's really no holding back the ocean. It just took over, and we didn't have anything after that. So we played on the bank a little bit. Now, in a third location, we did manage to get a dam working pretty well, and we got a side stream to sort of carve into the beach nicely. And it let us experiment a little bit with a few things. Calvin built a pole, or a tower, I guess. Then we let it flood, and the flood was actually able to tip over the tower. And something I found that was really interesting, and I had to go and kind of look it up and figure out what it was I was seeing. And I think what it's called is surge flow. So you'll get rivers that erode the riverbed and will be smooth. And then as the riverbed erodes and sort of makes ripples in the bottom of the stream, that bottom gets rougher and rougher and longer, and it holds more water in the stream. And then those ripples collapse and it becomes smooth again, and then that makes for a little flash flood or a little surge in the river. And we were getting an example of that pretty clearly in our little river we made from our dam, which was kind of neat to see. It would be sort of almost empty, and then there'd be a surge and it would flood like a little flash flood. And the flow at the top was the same. Nothing was changing as far as the water entering the stream. It was all the friction between the water and the riverbed. But really, in the end, the best part of the beach is jumping over waves. Thanks for watching. The dog did it.